First reading is from the 11th chapter of Isaiah, beginning at the first verse. A shoot shall come out from the stump of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots. The Spirit of the Lord shall rest on him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge and the fear of the Lord. His delight shall be in the fear of the Lord. He shall not judge by what his eyes see, or by what his ears hear, but with righteousness he shall judge the poor, and decide with equity for the meek of the earth. He shall strike the earth with the rod of his mouth, and with the breath of his lips he shall kill the wicked. Righteousness shall be the belt around his waist, and faithfulness the belt around his loins. The wolf shall live with the lamb, the leopard shall lie down with the kid, the calf and the lion and the fatling together, and a little child shall lead them. The cow and the bear shall graze, their young shall lie down together, and the lion shall eat straw like the ox. The nursing child shall play over the hole of the asp, and the weaning child shall put its hand on the adder's den. They will not hurt or destroy on all my holy mountain, for the earth will be full of the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. On that day the root of Jesse shall stand as a signet to the peoples. The nations shall inquire of him, and his dwelling shall be glorious. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Fake news. It's a problem lately. Politicians across the political spectrum decry its existence. Our security and intelligence agencies warn us about its effect on our elections. And even our family and friends share stuff on our news feeds that we are sure is fake. Now, in spite of the fact that sometimes people say that news is fake just because they don't like it or it makes them look bad, sometimes the images we see really are fake. That is, they're false. They're things that never happened, or at least things that never happened in the way that they're presented. We have all seen, and sometimes we have created, images using Photoshop that change what actually happened when the picture was taken. We've seen deep fake videos that appear to be genuine, but actually have been altered. And we have seen lots of memes, those pictures of famous people with a caption underneath their picture with something that they never said or never wrote. Sometimes we've believed the fake news. Sometimes we've been the people who have shared the fake news. We have been duped, even by what our eyes have seen and what our ears have heard. And often, we're tempted to think that this is a problem of our age because of our technology. And certainly, our technology enables us to create all kinds of fake news that was never possible before, and the internet makes it possible for it to go viral. But while our technology has certainly made this problem worse, it didn't create the problem. Fake news has been around for as long as there have been people. Any group of people has always had this problem. And even good people, people on the lookout for fake news, have often been fooled by what their eyes have seen and by what their ears have heard. And so it is that in today's vision from Isaiah, Isaiah says that there is one who is coming, a Messiah, who will not judge by what his eyes see or decide by what his ears hear. You know, at first glance, that sounds kind of counterintuitive. After all, some of the best judgments I can possibly make and the best decisions I can make are based upon what I can see with my own eyes and what I've heard with my own ears. I was on jury duty a couple years ago, and pastors should never, ever be put on juries for a very number of reasons, but neither of the lawyers got this memo. And as we sat down before jury duty started, the judge said to us, "Now listen, you are going to see things that are going to be presented to you in court, which you should watch and pay close attention to. You will hear people get on the stand, and they will tell you things, and you should listen to what they say. And based upon what you see and what you hear, you are to render a verdict. You are not to get on the internet and look up this case. You are not to read news reports about it. You are not to discuss it with your family and friends and see what they think. You are to decide by what your eyes see and by what your ears hear. And that made sense because often that's the best we can do, deciding by what our own eyes see and by what our own ears hear. But even then, a decision can be hard, because even without technology, we all know times when looks have been deceiving. And we have all known people who, with a straight face and a smile, have told us things that turned out to be lies. It's been fake news. And whether even we can see it with our eyes or hear it with our ears, it may still be fake. And so Isaiah's vision, his vision of God's future, is a vision where God will send a Messiah who will not judge simply by what his eyes see or what his ears hear. Instead, he'll know the truth, the whole truth. He will not be deceived by the fake news. And that's the future that God has in store for all of us, Isaiah says. That's his vision of what God is going to finally do at the end of time. It will be full of peace and truth, and the fake news will have no place there anymore. Which is all great, for the end of time, but what about right now? See, now is still full of lies, half-truths, fake news. What do we do? How do we live through that? Isaiah's vision is not intended to tell us, here are your simple 2-3 things that you should check off, and then you'll know what the real news is versus the fake news. And he's not promising us that the fake news is going to go away all of a sudden. Instead, he lifts up this vision of God's future in order to give the first hearers and to give us hope and strength to endure and to navigate the world that we live in, which is often filled with fake and half-truths. And in Isaiah's vision, Isaiah helps us, or at least asks us to think about how we can navigate through this world as we wait for God's truth, by calling us, first of all, to remember to have some humility when we think we know the truth. Because after all, if the truth could be absolutely known simply by looking more closely or listening more intently, well, then we'd figure it out, and we wouldn't need somebody to help us who doesn't decide by what his ears hear or what his eyes see. And sometimes, one of the most important things we can do in navigating all the fake news around us is not to be people who exacerbate the problem. And sometimes we've done that. It's not just the people who create the fake news. It's when we decide we absolutely know everything there is to know about this, and we start telling other people, sharing it on our news feeds, especially when it perfectly coincides with our political opinion. This is exactly what I thought, and therefore it must be true, and I put it out there. Sometimes what we got to do is realize that sometimes what I see with my eyes and hear with my ears may not be true, may not be all true, may not be the exact complete story. So here's the example from today's readings. John the Baptist, right? He shows up in the wilderness and he says, "One more powerful than I is coming." He's right. He knows Jesus is coming. He knows Jesus is going to do something really new for God and in a way that's going to absolutely transform the world. But he starts going on about this stuff, about, you know what, folks, you better watch out because his winnowing fork is in his hand. The axe is at the root of the tree. Even now, he's about to cut down and throw it into the fire, and it's going to burn with unquenchable fire. And then Jesus comes along, and he's not into all the fire and brimstone stuff. He's into forgiveness. He's into loving and caring people. And John the Baptist about 8 chapters later, we're going to read it next week, ends up in prison and sends word to him and says, really, Jesus, are you the guy we were supposed to be waiting for? Or should we look for somebody else? Because my understanding of what you're supposed to be doing, you don't fit quite the news that I was giving. You don't fit quite into my little kind of box that I put you in. John the Baptist actually knew some of the truth, but didn't have exactly the whole truth about what Jesus was going to do. And if even John the Baptist needs a little humility when he's looking at what God's doing in our lives, Isaiah's caution to us is also to be people who say, I know what God's truth is, but doesn't make me God, and I don't know the whole thing either. And that can help in navigating some of the fake news that's all around us. But often, the thing that Isaiah wants to lift up for us is to be assured that God, in fact, knows the truth, even when the fake news seems to dominate the headlines, and even when we ourselves don't know exactly what the truth is. You know, we hear so much fake news, half-truths, lies around us, that sometimes we get cynical and we go, you know what? I wonder if anything is true. Is there such a thing as objective truth? Is there any truth out there at all? But I know in my life, and probably you do in yours, that when somebody has said something wrong about you and told lies about you, when you know that your friends know the truth, when you know that the people who care about you know what's real, that gives you strength and stamina to be able to endure the lies and the half-truths that are out there. And that's what Isaiah wants us to have also. He tells us that, you know what? God does actually know the truth. The whole truth. Nothing but the truth. And even if you don't know what that truth is, and even if the world doesn't care, God still knows this. And that's supposed to give us the strength and the endurance to be able to endure a world that's full of lies, half-truths, and fake news. And then in the end, Isaiah says, finally, it's not just that God knows the truth, but that God's truth is finally going to win out over all of the fake news, even the fake news that we have unintentionally propagated. God's truth wins. You know what? The funny thing is, paradoxically, God's truth that he lifts up, it sounds like the fakest news of all, right? Here it is. The wolf shall live with the lamb. The nursing child shall play over the hole of the asp, the most poisonous snake there is in the Middle East. We did not see any on our Holy Land trip, which was good. They will not hurt or destroy on all my holy mountain. Sounds fake. I mean, that's the problem, that sometimes the stuff that sounds fake is true, and sometimes the stuff that sounds true is fake. Isaiah says this is God's truth. This is God's will for the world. This is what God is absolutely going to bring about, whether anybody knows it or not. And knowing that in the end, God's truth wins can help us to be able to keep on going and to endure, even when so much of the news around us seems fake. The world around us, right now, is full of fake news. It always has been. And in the midst of the fake news, Isaiah's vision calls us to be people who are vigilant not to believe at first glance everything that our ears hear and that our eyes see. Instead, Isaiah promises us that God knows the truth, the whole truth, even when we don't. Isaiah promises us that God will include each and every one of us in that truth. And most of all, Isaiah reminds us that God's truth is actually better and more exciting than the most tantalizing and sensational fake news that we hear in the world around us.